There comes a time in every man's life when the noise becomes too loud. Not the noise outside, but the one inside. That constant storm of desires, fears and opinions, pulling us in every direction but inward. And that is where most people lose their spiritual discernment. They stop hearing the quiet voice of reason, the inner guide that Stoics called the ruling principle, hegemonikon, the part of us that knows the truth, even when the world lies to us. If you want to live with a clear mind, a grounded soul, and an unshakable spirit, then you must avoid these 4 mistakes, because they are the silent killers of inner peace. They are the poison that clouds your judgment and blinds your spiritual sight. Mistake 1, being a slave to emotional impulses. When something disturbs you, anger, jealousy, fear, pride, do you act or do you observe? Because one of the greatest Stoic lessons ever taught was that you are not your emotions, you are the observer of them. Epictetus said, "It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things." But here's the tragedy: most people never learn to separate what they feel from what is real. Their emotions command them like masters, and they obey like slaves. A single insult burns their peace. A minor failure turns into self-hatred, and when their desires are not fulfilled, they curse life itself. But what they don't realize is that every moment of emotional surrender weakens the soul. It makes the mind less clear, the heart more reactive, and the spirit more fragile. The man who cannot govern his reactions is not free. He's merely pretending to be. Seneca warned, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." You see, the Stoics did not run from emotional storms, they walked through them, because that's where strength is built. Every time you choose restraint over rage, calm over chaos, understanding over vengeance, your spiritual sight becomes clearer. You start to see life as it is, not as your ego paints it. You start to realize that control over your emotions is control over your destiny. And that's what spiritual discernment truly means: to know when to act and when to remain still. To feel deeply, yet never be drowned by what you feel. When your emotions rule you, you see the world through fog. When you rule them, the fog lifts, and you begin to see the truth. Mistake 2, seeking validation instead of virtue. The second mistake, and perhaps the deadliest one, is this: living to be seen instead of living to be. We live in an age of constant exposure. Everyone wants to be noticed, approved, admired, but in this pursuit they trade something sacred, their authenticity. And once that's gone, spiritual discernment follows it into the dark. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." And that's exactly where people lose their power. When your sense of worth depends on the shifting winds of others' praise, your soul becomes restless. You begin to twist your actions, your words, even your principles, just to fit in. The Stoic walks another path. He understands that the opinion of others is not his business. He knows that truth is not decided by applause, and that virtue, courage, wisdom, justice, temperance is its own reward. To live by virtue is to live by inner law. It means doing what is right, even when no one sees it. It means standing in silence, calm and upright, while the world screams for your attention. And that silence, that refusal to bend for validation, gives birth to a magnetic strength, a spiritual gravity that draws others without you needing to chase them. The Stoic's validation comes not from the world, but from within. He knows that when he acts with integrity, when his mind and his deeds align, that is enough. He doesn't need to explain himself to those who wouldn't understand. He doesn't need to perform, because the truth needs no stage. When you stop seeking validation, you start seeing the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. You start hearing your inner voice again, the one that was buried under noise. And that's when discernment returns, because the mind no longer trembles under the weight of approval. Mistake 3. Ignoring the inner voice that warns you. There's a voice within you that doesn't shout, it whispers. It doesn't come from fear, desire, or pride. It comes from the stillness beyond emotion. Most people ignore it because they've become addicted to noise. They can't stand silence, because in silence, truth speaks. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." What he meant was that what you dwell upon becomes your nature. And when your inner world is flooded with noise, anxiety, gossip, comparison, endless stimulation, your spiritual discernment fades. You stop noticing that faint internal warning before you make a mistake. You stop feeling that quiet discomfort that tells you something is off. You drown out the inner compass that has always been guiding you. A true Stoic knows that this voice, this intuition shaped by reason, is sacred. It's not mystical. It's not divine in a religious sense. It's the voice of rational clarity. It's the fragment of universal order that lives within each of us. But here's the danger. When we constantly distract ourselves, when we never sit in stillness, that voice weakens, and soon we start confusing impulses for insight and emotions for truth. Seneca warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." When your attention is scattered, your discernment dies, because focus is the foundation of wisdom. Without focus, even the wisest man will mistake illusion for reality. So train yourself to listen again. When you feel restless, pause. When anger rises, breathe. When the world pushes you to react, step back. Your power lies in your ability to remain centered when everyone else is lost in motion. That is how you awaken your spiritual discernment, by protecting the silence where your true self speaks. Remember this, the world's noise will always be louder than your inner voice. But the truth is never loud. It simply waits for you to be quiet enough to hear it. Mistake 4. Forgetting that suffering is the greatest teacher. The second killer of spiritual discernment is the avoidance of pain. We live in a time when people will do anything to not feel discomfort, to not face silence, failure, or loss. They distract, escape, and numb themselves, and in doing so, they cut off their own growth. Epictetus, born a slave and later one of the greatest philosophers of all time, taught this law. Difficulties show what men are. What he meant was that suffering is not your enemy, it's your mirror. It shows you where you still lack discipline, where your peace is still dependent on the external world, where your ego still hides behind illusions. But here's the tragedy. Most people see pain as punishment, not purification. They curse their hardships instead of seeing them as the fire that burns away weakness. The Stoic knows that life will test him. He expects pain, betrayal, rejection, loss. Not because he's pessimistic, but because he understands what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Every struggle is an initiation into greater clarity. Every heartbreak is a lesson in detachment. Every failure is a teacher in disguise, stripping you of false attachments and revealing your true strength. But if you run from pain, if you resist every hardship, you blind yourself to its wisdom. You become fragile, like glass easily shattered by the weight of reality. And your spiritual discernment decays, because you no longer see that life's harshness is not cruelty, it's correction. We are shaped not by comfort, but by resistance. The Stoics understood that peace is not found in avoiding storms, but in learning to walk through them untouched. So when life wounds you, don't rush to heal. Sit with the pain. Observe it. Ask what it's trying to teach you, because hidden beneath every wound is a lesson in mastery. And if you have the courage to endure, that pain becomes power. The kind of power that no praise, no success, no pleasure could ever give you. When we accept suffering as a teacher instead of an enemy, we begin to see the pattern behind the chaos, the logic behind the loss. And that is where true discernment lives, in the calm acceptance that everything, even pain, serves a higher order. There's a moment, a quiet, almost sacred moment, when you stop fighting to be understood and simply strive to understand, when you stop reacting and start reflecting. When you stop chasing what's fleeting and start cultivating what's eternal. That's when your spiritual eyes open. That's when the noise fades and the signal of truth becomes clear. Remember this: no one can destroy your peace unless you hand them the keys. No one can steal your clarity unless you surrender it through attachment, anger, or fear. So guard your inner world as the Stoics guarded their reason. Refuse to be ruled by emotion, refuse to be blinded by validation, and you will begin to see what others cannot: the quiet order behind the chaos, the wisdom hidden inside every wound, and the strength that only silence can teach. Because when the world is loud, only the still mind can hear the truth. The world won't reward you for being calm. It won't praise you for your silence or for your restraint. But those who learn to master their emotions, those who rise above chaos instead of reacting to it, they move differently. They see what others can't. They endure what others fear. And in their quiet strength, they become untouchable. Get exclusive content and deeper insights. Join our membership today. Link in the description. If this resonated with you, subscribe to the Stoic Verse for more wisdom to guide your journey.